Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to an in-person episode of The Corner Office here, filming from my basement. As always, it's good to have a special guest with us today.
Veteran of the show, Kevin Penders, welcome back on.
Hi. By the way, it's not your basement, it's my basement.
Yes. All right. It's going to be a lot of this today. This is the third day we've tried to record an episode.
It just hasn't worked until this point.
So yeah, I mean, we're excited to talk about a lot of playoff basketball today. A lot of Celtics talk, for sure, just because that's what we're interested in talking about. And we've heard some really frustrating things over the past 48 hours, Jack and I, while just listening to Boston Sports Talk Radio in the car. But that being said, we do have another series going on, the Western Conference Finals, and I think that it's best that we just get that out of the way first.
No, I think we have to talk Celtics first, and here's why.
Okay.
For those of you who aren't paying attention to our Instagram at the Corner Office Pod, definitely tune into that.
Yeah.
So that you don't miss anything about the show. But we were posting about our experiences at the Eastern Conference Finals Game 2. And so this entire idea happened because we figured that we had to sit down and talk about all the nonsense that was going on with Boston media surrounding the Celtics' success so far.
Okay.
And it's just frustrating that we get to this point, at that point up 2-0, now up 3-0 in a series, and the thing that is talked about the most is how bad your main player is. Especially when you look at a Celtics team that has now played 13 games in the playoffs, and they are 11-2. And yet the narrative is still, look at how bad this player is. Why is that?
I think there's a perception that because he's your best player, he has to be your most outgoing player. He has to be your most prototypical team leader player. And he has to be that sort of like chip on his shoulder, won't stop till he's won, will run through a wall. The Tom Brady, the Larry Bird, the Bobby Orr, you look at the Reds, you look at the Boston sportscape, and you always end up with somebody that folks gravitate to, right or wrong, that is there like this epitomizes the Celtics way, the Bruins way, the Patriots way. And I think folks look at Jason Tatum locally and say, he's a nice player. He's one of the top 5 in MVP voting. He's a great basketball player. But there's something there on the leadership side of it that folks aren't embracing. And as a result, they're taking it the other way. They're not vilifying him, but they are pointing out a character flaw there that people have real or perceived, collected. And, it's not really fair to him. He's still a 27-year-old kid. But he's a 27-year-old kid
who's a massive team success.
Yes, that's right. So, and is on the precipice of making a $300 million contract.
Which he will deserve.
I agree.
Yes.
But with all of that, people expect him to be the outgoing face of a program.
Which he is. I don't think that's the issue. I think that people think he's inconsistent, which is also not true. Like, if you look at all the young stars in the league, like, we had this conversation a few weeks ago, just like how many players we think in the playoffs have performed better than Jason Tatum up until this point. Jason Tatum is a player who can go out and drop 36, 10, and 8 like he did yesterday and win Game 3 and still get criticized.
Well, we all know who won Game 3.
Drew Holiday won Game 3.
Al Horford won Game 3.
Drew Holiday won Game 3. We'll get to that. But, like, Tatum is just he's more criticized than any other superstar level player in the league, I think. People question the fact that he's a superstar.
But compared to who?
So on the last show, we were still in the middle of the respective conference semifinals.
Yeah.
And we talked about the players that have been better than Jason Tatum so far this playoffs.
Yep.
And they were Jalen Brunson.
Yep.
Luka Doncic. Shea
We did not say Luka. We said Shea and Jalen Brunson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you have to account for their markets.
So
Jalen Brunson is playing in New York with a market that would kill you if you don't play the way
this is my point that I was making. The 3 players were Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
Shea and Jalen Brunson are now out.
Yeah.
So the only player that was performing better in the media, and this is Boston media and this is national media, than Jason Tatum was Anthony Edwards. Jason Tatum has scored more points had more rebounds and had more assists than Anthony Edwards in 7 straight games.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating to me that this is the narrative not throughout the country, but even within our own city.
I think they're two different
That we are
narratives,
admitting.
That's my point. I think they're two different narratives.
But we are admitting that there is someone who is better than we are, or better. There is a player who is better than our best player, when the numbers show that that is not true.
So I think it's two different narratives, because I've watched the national broadcast, obviously, as well, and I find that the national broadcast is hugely anti-Celtic, anti-Tatum. Anti-Tatum in particular.
They're not anti-Celtic. The narrative around the Celtics at this point is you've been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals, and
but you haven't won.
But you haven't won.
So therefore, you're a failure.
So therefore, if you don't win, you fail.
Yeah, that's the national. But there's also and Jason Tatum is a failure because he is not leading that effort.
And those are two completely different narratives. One is on a legacy scale, and one is for this season right now, which is 100% true. And both of those narratives are out in the media.
I agree. But again, I think there's a national media point of view, and I think there's a local media point of view. If you're gonna talk about sports radio and being in the car listening to
sports radio, they're a lot more similar than you think.
The sports
I think they come
radio
from different places.
People think players like Jason Tatum just come around.
Well, so here was my point. Here was my point that I was making surrounding us listening to the radio on the way home from playing golf the other day. Is that Boston fans, for a certain age range, which is effectively, for the most part, anyone older than us.
I believe you refer to it as old head basketball.
True.
It's not even old head basketball.
Old with a head take issue with.
It's not even old head basketball. It's just people that don't fully understand the game.
Yeah.
Agree with these narratives that are created on Boston sports radio, because people from Boston people from Massachusetts, people from all of New England do not listen to national radio on their way to work in the car. They listen to 98.5. They listen to Felger and Maz. And the narratives that are on that show is he's not good enough. They aren't good enough.
And it's
they
given
won't
by
win.
3 people who don't understand the game.
And that is my point. These people are not paid to go on the radio and be basketball experts. They're paid because they're entertaining and can talk about a wide variety of sports.
I think they would own that.
And I think that Boston fans are failing to recognize real media when they listen to this garbage that is spewed out by people who do not understand the game. And I think that Felger and Mads would say that they don't understand the game quite like they do other sports, or quite like other people do.
I'm not sure that they would say that, but I do think that. But I understand your point. I think, and Felger would say it in and of himself. It's entertainment. He wants a series that's entertaining. He wants, for example, and he said it on radio this week, he wants Minnesota-Boston because it's a more interesting series to talk about. Otherwise, he's got 3 weeks of Kyrie Irving stepping on the leprechaun, Kyrie Irving coming back to Boston. But local sports fans want Kyrie Irving because they want to take a pound of flesh out of the guy who decided that Boston wasn't good enough for him, right? So there is a different motivating factor there. And if you're looking on the Boston sports scene, whether it's EEI or the Hub, you're going to get that sort of slanted viewpoint, but you are getting, Felger and Maz is a fun show to listen to, but it's a fun show to listen to because it's entertainment. They know their sport, but
it's entertainment, but we were listening during when they are talking with each other, their job is to entertain everyone listening.
And they get callers.
But we were listening. That's my point. Yeah. We were listening to the callers portion.
Yep.
And the people calling in, saying the most outlandish takes, except for one of them. And the one caller that we heard was the conversation that we have had 2 or 3 times surrounding O'Shea Brissett in Game 2.
Yeah.
He said...
So it was you.
It was not me.
It must have been you.
It was not me, but I was sitting in the front seat nodding along like, you know what? That's a really good point. I like this guy. Clearly younger than everyone else had called. He said O'Shea Brissett played great minutes in Game 2 and deserves to see the floor more.
Which is true.
He played great minutes in Game 2. And he has to see the floor more because Cornette's hurt.
Exactly. But they trashed it. They trashed his take.
Well, my special guest value is not to pick apart, what they're going to do. But if the argument is you should see O'Shea Brissett more than the 12 minutes he got in Game 2, then the Celtics are not
I
constituted
think you should
correct.
see O'Shea Brissett exactly the amount that you saw him in Game 2.
Okay, so here is something that we
I
talked
would
about.
rather have O'Shea Brissett minutes than Xavier Tillman minutes.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think
Why?
it depends on the lineup that's out there. But O'Shea Brissett played last night and only played 8 minutes and had a -6, which means that they did not game plan for him in Game 2. They game planned for him in Game 3,
Yep.
and it didn't work. And that is the role player's job, which is what we've talked about. And you made a point to me off camera, obviously, 2 nights ago that, sure, he played great minutes in Game 2, but that's because no one focuses on the guy that's 9 or 10 guys deep down your bench. So now they had to in Game 3. And when he was on the floor, it was not productive minutes. But when someone else was on the floor, maybe like when Drew Holiday was on the floor with the double bigs with Al and Xavier Tillman, we went on an 8-0 run to close out the first half. And that's exactly what his job is.
That was an interesting lineup.
Yeah, I think if the argument is O'Shea Brissett in Game 2 gave you exactly what you needed to get you across the line and wasn't that great, then yes, I agree with that. If you're using that as a springboard for anything else, then it becomes, at the end of the day, it's not that I have anything against O'Shea Brissett or Xavier Tillman, because I don't. But if the Celtics are relying on them to win a championship, then that is not a comforting and settling idea given the way.
But how many?
I don't think that they necessarily should be playing more minutes, but I'm saying that they are giving a lot more when they're on the floor compared to guys like Sam Hauser who are just doing cardio.
Then how many championship caliber teams can you remember that only play 7 deep? Like
Golden State.
I mean, I don't. The
Golden
Bulls.
State when?
The Bulls weren't
KD
No, before.
before KD.
Yeah,
They were not very deep.
the Bulls in the '90s were not. They had a deep 7, but they were not a very deep team. Right?
Okay,
I mean,
I guess yeah.
But not in recent years.
no.
Not since that Warriors team.
It doesn't work.
Oh, the Cavs never had a deep team.
with LeBron.
Never did, yeah.
Okay, so you can
But since then, every team that's won is 8 or 9 guys.
During the super team era, yes, there was less depth, but the last 6 years there have been 6 different champions, and every single one of them has had completely deep depth pieces.
Right, because if you're a super team, you have no bench and you're weak, and the guy that is your super team that you build around gets hurt, and you limp to the end.
Yep.
Like, right now you have 4 teams in the conference finals, right? You have Indiana, who plays 8 deep at the minimum.
Absolute minimum. They play 10 deep.
Yeah.
You have the Celtics.
In fact, Carlisle has taken Knox as a coach for the fact that he has a 2-set rotation, that he's 10 deep. People have said he's playing too many guys.
He's not. He's playing the perfect amount.
And he has said, I'm not changing anything because it's worked, Gabe.
It is working.
So kudos to him for understanding what works. I'm just saying it's the other. If you've got people who are going to criticize the 7-8 man, the Tibbs rotation, right on the other end of the spectrum, you got people who are
You
criticizing.
just can't win a championship with the Tibbs rotation. You
Not
cannot
unless
sustain.
every single thing goes right.
Unless you're sweeping every series, you cannot win a
They have
championship.
7. They had like 6 active players in the last game of the season, just because they had so many injuries from overstrain. Like,
Which is why Tom Thibodeau has never won anything. He's never won anything.
And he has a track record of having his star players, i.e. Derrick Rose, tear their Achilles and ruin their career in games that they shouldn't be playing.
And now players that are hurt at the end of the season: Mitchell Robinson, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, Josh Hart,
OG Anunoby,
and there was another big man who had to get surgery. It may have been Hartenstein. 6 out of your most played players. You can't win a championship like that. And if you do, you can't have a successful season afterwards because everyone's going to be dead.
And so, sure, there are minutes that the Celtics play that I really don't like. I think Sam Hauser has played very poorly thus far. He has one job on the team, and that's to make threes. And like, I understand that like it's difficult to come off the bench and be cold, but like the looks he's getting are wide open looks, shots he needs to be making, and he's not a good enough defender to be playing as many minutes as he's played. I think with the Cornet injury, you're going to see more Tillman minutes. but I don't see why you wouldn't keep Brissett in, a guy who can guard better 1 through 5, considering the fact that he's also been guarding Miles Turner, right? Like, that has been
His
one
whole
of the
career.
matchups. Yeah, his whole career he's been doing it. But, like, one of the biggest matchups that we've had thus far is in Pacers Celtics right now, the big issue is Pascal Siakam to me.
Yeah.
Just because the one matchup that I think you can point to out of all of them and say that is a mismatch is Al Horford on Pascal Siakam. But that's a switch from game 1 where Al Horford was guarding Miles Turner and he had like 25 points on us. So, like, I think disguising Al Horford is probably the biggest issue with our roster right now. Just because defensively, because he's not as versatile anymore. He can't move as well. But I kind of do like the fact that with him on Pascal, it means that he can be more of like help rotation just because of the 3-point shooting.
Yep.
And Miles Turner played well last night too, right? Like,
he played well.
Their intensity was high. They played a very high intensity game,
Yeah.
and they also attacked the inside. Everything was
correct.
Was
they
a
had
2-point
like
jump.
70 something.
They had
in the paint. Points.
2 players make a 3-point shot. They had 2 made threes last night.
But I don't remember how many threes they attempted.
Not
the vast
many.
majority was in the paint.
I agree.
Nemhard had 4.
Yep.
McDermott went 1 for 1. Siakam went 0 for 2. And Miles Turner maybe went 0 for 2. And Aaron Nesmith missed the last shot of the game. That is all I remember.
Yep.
For 3-point shots.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, and uncharacteristically in Game 3, you saw Derek White and Drew Holiday kind of get cooked defensively up until the last play of the game, where Drew Holiday.
I would argue the last quarter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the last 2 quarters. The last 8 minutes. The first half, we let up 70 points.
Right.
We only let up
And at
114 for the game.
At halftime, we were all very salty and very upset. And I was like, let's talk about some positives. They're not going to shoot 65%.
But the defensive adjustment that they made was send more help rotation. We probably had like 8 blocks in the second half.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And 3 of them were by White.
Correct.
Make it compact.
Yep.
Right? When the only reason they got back in that game at all was the defense.
Yep, I agree.
Al Horford had 3 blocks. Derek White had 3 in the first half.
Yeah. Drew Holiday had
at least one.
They were picking up. They were getting beat on the cut to the inside. And it was just
a 12 blocks last night.
It's just a 12 block. It was just a side elbow ball screen that Nemhard would come off of, and there would be no help coming from the rotation. He'd just have a free run at the basket, or like it would be a kick into an isolation on the wing for Siakam, and he'd get to his pull up game, or it'd be
a lot of what I saw.
He'd get into his pull up game coming off the screen or the same thing.
A lot of what I saw was, and you wouldn't think it when Tyrese Halliburton is not on the floor.
Yeah.
Matchup hunting was a huge part of last night's game.
I agree.
I thought we did not switch well for the majority of last night's game.
Yep.
Pascal Siakam was getting whatever matchup he wanted, and then once he got into the low post, he doesn't miss those shots.
But you're right.
I think that the biggest part was T.J. McConnell and Andrew Nemhard were the 2 most influential players for the Pacers last night. Yep. And they were having so much success.
Which is what you expected.
Right. But they were having so much success coming off a wing screen.
Yeah.
And getting to a mid-range spot, and we were not switching quickly enough to get in front of them. And they're both very quick, which allowed for a lot of free runs to the basket.
I agree.
Which is something that cannot happen in Game 4 because you will lose.
But there was an adjustment made in the third quarter to limit those looks, right? Like that was part of the fact that they got a 15-point lead going into half.
Right.
Was because of the fact that they were getting wing ball screens, getting downhill, and getting their shots. Like, we forced TJ McConnell into some tough looks. You know, if he's fading from 10 to 12 feet out.
But that is the kind of shots that he makes.
It's what he wants to do. But like, if I'm okay with having a contest there and then grabbing a rebound and going. A second thing that happened in Game 3 was in Game 2, we absolutely dominated the offensive glass, and we were getting hammered last night.
Yes,
agreed.
Hammered for all of it.
Agreed.
Including plays where you have a guy like Miles Turner who steals a possession and then throws it out of bounds because he was aiming for the guy in the corner. And
right. I do remember this. Yeah.
But like, the fact of the matter is, like, the Celtics need to do a much better job controlling the offensive glass, and they are smaller in this series, right? So like, it is going to be a bit of a struggle.
I wouldn't expect them to win the rebound battle from here.
No, but it's got to be closer.
But we can't be out-rebounded by a net of 14.
But that takes you back to, so there's your, can a Brissett or a Tillman bang away in a way that's going to help you with that on the offensive glass?
I think that's maybe why they went to the Al Horford and Big Z lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I just think at 38, just shy of 38. What you're asking Horford to do is Superman-esque without Porzingis there. And I think
you're asking him to do a lot.
Right, and that was, and he's doing what he's doing, which is outstanding.
Yep.
But so you're not going to hear me say anything other than great things about Al Horford.
Aside from the fact that 12 threes is way too many.
Not when you make 7.
I agree with you. I think that the number.
Who else? It is not the game plan I would want them to have.
It's too many.
But what's the other option?
It's unsustainable.
I think that the number fluctuates based on how he starts the game.
Fine.
If he started the game 3 for 4,
yeah.
If he's shooting 75%, why would you ever tell him to not shoot a wide open look? But if he starts off the game 1 for 4, then 6 or 7 is his magic number. Okay. Because they still have to respect it, but he's not chucking everything.
He does need to make one early.
So let's go back to your earlier comment, though, or your earlier question about Boston media. If Al Horford was taking shots, like affirmatively taking shots away from Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, I think you'd have grounds to be like, why are our team leaders letting this happen on the wing? Like, you take the ball away from him, everybody sit him down, say, listen, we need to win a game, not pump your stats, and pass the ball around and let Tatum go to work. But Tatum had a great game of his own, quietly great. He had a really good first half.
Yeah.
And set the tone early, but then he wasn't dominant in the second half. He did good things.
He got to the line.
He
didn't do in the first.
He hit big threes.
But it wasn't his. He didn't take control of the game.
I think that's because
it's kind of hard to take control of a 15-point deficit.
Correct.
I also think that is partially because our team is not built to be where he has to be in control all the time.
I agree.
We were very successful last night in those times where he wasn't ball dominant and in control.
But I think that's where your casual Boston sports fan drops down, because they're expecting the star to be the ball dominant stud all the time. One of the best plays Tatum made last night was, when he did it, I was like, oh my God, that's a horrible pass. Is he did that behind the back pass
to find Al in the corner.
He got doubled up, right? Because Al's guy sloughed off him to go get covered to go cover Tatum.
So they sent the double, yeah.
They sent the double. He behind his back passed it to Al wide open, and Al popped it up and in. And it was a beautiful, but that's one of Al's threes. The team leader is feeding him the ball and saying, shoot.
I mean, he had 36, 10, and 8. He had 8 assists.
In fairness to your listeners, we've been talking about whether or not Al Horford shoots too many three-pointers for 3 days. And the great joy in all of this is that it drives Al crazy if he shoots more than 6. But the reality is last night he made 7. Yeah. And without those 21 points,
you don't win.
You don't win. That offense last night at that stage wasn't coming from someplace else.
And if Al Horford is going to have a wide open 3,
I agree with the wide open 3.
Even if he has a mildly contested 3 that's from a spot that he can hit, instead of a double team drive to the rack.
So if it's a set,
not enough to be complaining about.
If it's a set shot in the corner where he's wide open or there's a closeout coming, sure, I'm fine with him taking it. But in transition, I never want to see him.
And that's a different point,
right? So I don't think you're going to see him take 12 tomorrow.
He took 12 in game 7
last night.
Or whatever it was.
But I don't think you see him.
He took 12 last night. He took
12 in game 5.
He took 10 in game 1.
If you have to respect him and cover, like we just said, how many of those were uncontested last night?
It's a huge part of our floor spacing.
More than 8.
I agree. I think it makes the floor spacing better. I love having him on the floor because it means that whenever Luke Cornett comes into the game and we drive and the double comes, we kick to him and he can't shoot.
Al Horford is also like a 41% three-point shooter.
He's a decent three-point shooter.
That's a great three-point shooter for a big man.
He has not shot 41% in the playoffs.
But he shot 41% throughout the entire season. And so if you are if it wasn't a center and you had someone shooting 12 three-pointers a game at a 41% clip, you would not be complaining about that shot.
Yeah.
I think it takes me back to the point about O'Shea Brissett. I'm not saying 12 minutes is wrong. I'm saying if we need 12 minutes,
it needs to be productive.
It needs to be productive, and that means we've got a hole someplace else if that's the guy we're doing it with. Okay. Similarly, Al Horford. If Al Horford's going to take 12 3-pointers, that can't be our offense. That's our offense in the moment. That's the offense that we're stepping. If our whole goal in a game is for Al Horford to get his buckets, we got problems.
And
because we've missed our options with White, with Tatum, with Brown, with Holiday, right? Like, this team is beautifully built for, and Kristaps, if and when he comes back. Mm-hmm. This team is beautifully built for balance.
Another point people don't understand.
So you could make the inverse argument about when Jason Tatum has 23 points and 9 rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
Inefficient.
At a 45% clip.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that he doesn't, in a game where we win by 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are saying that he's slumping. It's an unfair argument to make because other people are carrying the load and taking shots and having better games than they might otherwise.
And what are the things that Tatum is doing if the ball's not going in? He is facilitating.
He has 6 assists and 9
exactly
rebounds.
my point.
Yeah.
He is where he is working in his game. What I'm seeing him do in the postseason are the things that show up in his stat sheet in a tangential way.
Yeah.
Right? That are all leading to wins.
Yeah, he's
and I think that Celtics fans get caught up in the box score. Maybe because they don't watch. I think fans
generally get caught up in the box score because it's about numbers. It's about it's about points.
Right.
Right? When was the last time the guy who was voted MVP was the assist leader in the league?
Never, but there's never been a...
But also...
How many assist leaders have averaged 30 points a game?
But you just took it back to points.
Well,
But hold on. It's different pieces of the box score.
Yes.
Right? So if you aren't looking at his field goal percentage splits from 3 and from the floor...
Also, Nikola Jokic is a league leader in assists, but go on.
So, my point is, Celtics fans get too caught up in the box score, but they're not looking at the right things. I think that regardless of how many points or assists or rebounds they have, if they are playing productive, efficient minutes, that is good enough for this team.
What's advanced stats? It's plus minus.
Plus minus is not an advanced stat.
It's the stat you should be looking at.
And I think that field goal percentage and plus minus are 2 of the most important stats in basketball.
I think you can take the argument you're having now and apply it to any sport. The casual fan doesn't care about OBP. The casual fan isn't worried about defensive stats in international soccer. The casual, why do we love Lionel Messi other than the fact that he's a transformational great, one of the greatest soccer players of all time? It's because he's a brand name. Why? Because he scores goals. He scores goals.
Correct.
At a historic rate. But I can't tell you if the wing back behind him is a Hall of Fame football player because nobody knows who he is.
It's Danny Alves.
You mean the guy who's won the most trophies in the history of the sport?
The guy who's won the most trophies in the history of the sport
was Lionel Messi's right back.
Okay. And he's won what individually?
Fair. Good point.
That's my point. At its core.
The most decorated player in the history of the sport has not won any individual awards. And you don't know his name.
You should know his name.
Yeah. But fair enough.
So that's, I think, for any casual fan, at the end of the day, what do we know? Right? We know the home run records. We know batting average records. We know points per game records. Right? We know goals records.
I'm going to push back on your assist point. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think points per game is important.
I just picked a category.
I can't think of it.
It was just an example.
I just picked a category. Fine. You can make it rebounds. You can make it whatever you want.
So going back to the original point that sparked this entire conversation is that is the conversation going on with the casual fan.
Yes.
Why does Boston media push the agenda of hating our own team so that it aligns with what the casual fan knows?
I think you should also realize, we're in the Eastern Conference Finals and we're up 3-0.
I think the narrative of a Boston sports fan has changed in the last 20 years because you've won.
Yeah.
You've won in every sport except for the Revs.
If the Red Sox
sport.
If the Red Sox were up 3-0 in the American League Championship,
we still wouldn't know who the starting 9 was.
But we would absolutely be more excited that they were up 3-0 than we are about the Celtics right now. And I understand that has to do with the legacy. But this is not the same team that has lost those 6 Eastern Conference Finals. And there's a reason that we lost our oldest player on the team, as well as a centerpiece in our defense in Robert Williams and Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
And that is to build a new team. And this is the
better
new
team.
team. A much better team.
Yeah, we're better.
And even the casual fan knows that.
I think so.
So why has the clock not refreshed?
Well, I think the answer, so my guess, living here all the time, is I think the answer is one, sports radio or sports talk with an endless cycle of what's the story needs to have something to make you listen, call, and talk about. And people like to complain, not to accolade. So you play that tune. Two, we're not, as the guy in the room who was there in 2004 when the Red Sox broke the curse, I will tell you, having been from 71 to 2004, we would watch every year until about August, and then you can stop watching them. Right? But
that's us right now.
Well, yeah. But
except you move the clock back to May.
It's May and I'm done.
Yeah.
But in fact, yes. I mean, as an aside, I had this conversation with one of my best friends not that long ago. We played a little game of name 5 Red Sox.
Oh, my dad and I played that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Dad, this is Cedane Rafaela. He's one of our best players. He goes, what position does he play?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know.
So there you go. We had a hard time coming up with 5 too. I came up with 5. They were all on the disabled list. Anyway,
Nice.
I think that for the casual Boston sports fan, one is, I think now there is an expectation of winning, in a way that, I mean, if we're going to just talk about the Celtics, the reality is that the casual Celtics fan identifies everything with a dynasty. The long-standing dynasty, right? And so, Bill Russell could win, and Bob Cousy could win, and Larry Bird could win, and John Havlicek could win, and the legacy has passed from this one to that one to this one in this sort of sweeping nostalgia that they weren't a part of, the fan, right? But we have sold that to you. I mean, and we believe it, but we have sold that to you in such a way that you're like, why aren't these guys revering the nostalgia? Now, the only guys that they ever watched, if they watched them at all, was Pierce and Garnett and Allen and and Rondo and that last team, right?
And that team is much more disappointing than ours is.
Again, disappointing to me is hard to come by in either context because
I'm sorry, the narrative is that they're incredibly disappointing. As the original,
the narrative is, why didn't they win 3? Right. That's the right. But the other reality is because it's hard. Right. And that's I think part 2 is because the Boston sports fan has been spoiled. We now are not content to have the win. We're like, oh, we won, but we didn't beat Joel Embiid. Who cares?
Everyone beats Joel Embiid.
But our path to the NBA Finals, we had to play the guys that
so we
didn't get to beat Jimmy Butler. We didn't get to beat.
But you want to complain about a path.
I just want them to
win.
And
then you want to complain about people not giving a damn about the regular season. Like, yeah, we won 62 freaking games. Like,
yes,
we have earned
statistically one of the greatest teams of all time.
The easiest path to the NBA Finals. That's why you play in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and so if the argument,
and also if there was any team that was better than us,
they would
be playing, and we would not have won 11
by the
out
way,
of our first 13
if there was
games.
Any team that was better than you will see them in the finals because they will be in the West.
Correct.
So that's, I think, the part that the casual sports fan is choosing not to understand. But if this team, which won 62 games in the regular season, was really a wire-to-wire first place in the entire NBA, then proceeds to go on and win, regardless of who they beat, the playoffs, and win the world championship, they are the best team. Sports Talk doesn't want to accept that for whatever motivating factor in their listenership and their ratings. But the reality is, from start to finish, regular season to postseason,
I'll be at the parade.
Correct. Now, will you say that this was the greatest Celtics team of all time?
You could make an argument.
You may wish to make that argument. I won't do it, but that doesn't mean that they aren't champions.
Right.
And I think this notion of, they don't live up to when this guy won or when that guy won. Who cares? They're not them.
And they don't have to be.
Correct.
It's still the 18th banner in the rafters.
And even if it wasn't, it's still the 2024 banner in the rafters. All agreed. So, but we're hung up in the GOAT discussions and the Mount Rushmores and the where do you put this guy versus that guy, and is this guy. So we had a little technical difficulty yesterday while recording the pod. It dumped out, and since it refused to record, you've got your hosts in different wardrobe and attire to finish the thought today. I, however, because I do laundry in my house, have the ability to wear the same shirt again today as I did yesterday, just for your viewer continuity purposes, because that's the level of detail that the Corner Office podcast wants you to have. Welcome back to the show.
We've missed you over the last 24 hours.
Where we spent all of it roughly 7 feet from each other.
No more than 12, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Cornhole rules.
It's 24 and a half.
There you go. 24 feet apart. No more
Correct.
than.
Okay. I did not know that.
24 and a half feet. Standard regulation for boards.
Yo,
Not
leave
a
a comment
sponsor.
below if you also didn't know that.
There you go.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
We're about to pivot to a cornhole competition podcast. That's pretty good. Johnsonville will be picking you up shortly.
So, when we left off, we were talking about Boston, and you had a thought on that.
Well, we were talking about the you guys are talking about the national versus the local hate on Boston, particularly on Tatum for not being as profoundly takeovery, I guess we'll call it, in a game, right? And I was saying, we spend a lot of time focusing on who's the GOAT and who's the, who belongs on the Mount Rushmore. And at the end of the day, so therefore, does this trophy, if and when it happens, does banner 18 mean as much as banner 16, banner 10, who cares? The reality of the situation is we have had a wealth of riches, right? We have become spoiled over the last 20 years in Boston. And that's awesome. That should continue. I would like to see that continue. But whether they're on the Mount Rushmore or not, the reality is Tatum is one of the top 5-10 players, 5 clearly, players in the league. And we are blessed to have that to watch in this time. We should take advantage of it. But he may not be that transformative comparison that we see with other people historically, and we're also comparing them to ghosts, right?
Yeah, so I think that a point that comes up out of what you've made is that a lot of the narratives in the national media are surrounded, by, is he a top 5 player? Is he a top 7 player? Is he in MVP conversations? And at the end of the day, the difference between national media and local media is that local media should be pushing the agenda of it doesn't matter as long as we get the championship. It doesn't matter if he's a top 5 player.
It's all clickbait.
It's just conversation.
Yeah.
And most of it's empty words.
But our team is also not made up to be like Jason Tatum is probably going to get his 20 and 10, playing in a normal game, the amount of minutes he plays. But we also have set up our roster construction to have 5 stars.
And if you're going to talk about regular season numbers, I bet you that in the amount of minutes that he plays per game, he averages. I mean, he's still putting up, what was his regular season numbers? 27 and 9? In probably 6 to 8 less minutes than your run-of-the-mill average star, because we were beating teams by so many that he sat 15 fourth quarters.
So, I mean, that may be. I obviously, I didn't do any of that statistical analysis. My point yesterday, and it remains today, is if you were the wire-to-wire contender, right? If you were the wire-to-wire number 1, and you've gone through the postseason right now with 2 losses through 3 rounds,
yep.
then at the end of the day, it is a team game. I know we all like to talk about who's the best, blah, 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 because it's like this easy debate, but the answer is there is no answer, right? I mean, I think it was, I think somebody, one of the national broadcasters asked Jordan, if you played the LA Lakers today, if the 90s Bulls beat the LA Lakers today, what would the result be? And Jordan's quote, I'm paraphrasing, was, we'd probably beat them by 3 or 4. And they're like, why so few? And he goes, well, we're 60 now.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Seen
I
that
mean,
quote.
like, that like...
That's my favorite quote.
There you
I say that
go.
one all the time.
So it's a lot of fun to have these debates and to have a strong opinion on it for people who do. But the reality is, the 2024 Celtics are playing against the 2024 NBA. And what's in it? And it's Jason Tatum is a member of, Jaylen Brown is a member of the 2024 Celtics. And so whatever they do to lift up that team to get a banner, that's the goal.
And it won't have an asterisk on it.
No, it shouldn't.
It absolutely shouldn't. And people are talking about our team like if they win, it'll have an asterisk on it.
Yeah, but that's because people are chasing ghosts.
Okay, fair enough. Well, it is a team sport, and a team that's playing incredibly well right now out of the Western Conference is the Dallas Mavericks, who at the time of our recording yesterday had not played Game 3, but went out last night and beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in a spectacular finish. So now both series are at 3-0. Dallas looks like they're going to finish it out at home in Game 4. We're hoping that the Celtics finish it out in Game 4 tonight, so we will have a finals preview coming for you, whenever that may be. But what is making the Dallas Mavericks so good now compared to how mediocre they were throughout the entire regular season?
Trade deadline.
And veteran leadership.
Well, it's simple. It's as simple as the trade deadline because, look, you've with the Dallas Mavericks, it's always been an issue of size and players that can play around the skill players that they've had on the court. Like the Christian Wood experiment didn't work. They were starting guys like Dwight Powell and like people who now don't play any minutes at all. And at the trade deadline, they got 2 major acquisitions, that being Daniel Gafford, who's a very solid starting big man, does everything you need him to do, rolls, picks and rolls, gets up, can dunk the ball, can rim protect. I think he had 3 or 4 blocks last night. Offensive rebound, defensive rebound, plays hard, crashes the glass. And behind him...
He may have been the block leader in the NBA.
Right. Behind him, you have a young big in Derek Lively who can come in and do the exact same thing completely consistently. And then you get another player, PJ Washington, who is a 3-point shooter, a guy that can play relatively 1 through 5 on defense. Good shooter, good size, good length, athletic, just a bully on the glass as well. Like they filled the holes that they needed with size pieces to put around players like Luka Doncic, who can all be complementary. And then obviously you have Luka and Kyrie, who are probably the 2 best iso ball players in the league right now.
And they've stayed, yeah. So what the knock on them has been for the last couple of years that they were missing the size piece. Yeah. So they've tried different experiments over the last couple of years to fill that hole, and it hasn't worked.
But they needed a defensive presence.
Yeah,
was one of the biggest issues. Like
now
Christian Wood Christian Wood is a decent big. He just can't.
He is questionable for the game tomorrow.
Yeah, which is understandable because they're up 3-0. Yeah.
There's no reason.
Right. But for them, hopefully he's okay going forward, because the other thing that's been an issue for them in the past or during the course of the season has been that sporadic health, right? You've had, Kyrie has had to miss prolonged time with injuries. Doncic, he looks like he's in pain, but he's just sort of gotten through it now because it's time to do that. But those 2 things are the big difference for Dallas right now, it seems. And I would say Jason Kidd is coaching fabulously.
I agree.
Much better than he did throughout the regular season, in my opinion.
He's very much impressed me thus far because he's a coach that I don't think, like, when I think of the upper echelon of coaches in the NBA, he's not one of the people I think of. I don't really love his coaching style from game to game, but I think he's been very impressive in his adjustments from series to series, especially if you look at the Oklahoma City series, which has been their most heavily contested one thus far.
But he is also a much more experienced coach than people realize.
Yeah.
It's his 11th year coaching in the NBA. So he has been, even like he's never made a playoff run this deep, or maybe he did against
they made the Western.
They made the Western Conference Finals, but like they were never on the precipice of a championship like they are right now. And so he's known how to coach up to this moment, just like Joe Mazzulla has known how to coach up to this moment.
Yep.
And if that is the matchup, which we're not necessarily sure that it will be, but all signs point to it, I will be interested to see how the two of them coach against each other.
Yeah, agreed. But I think that's those three things right there are the three keys to why Dallas has been successful this year and hasn't been in recent years. Because it's not like the core there, once they had Kyrie, it's not like the core there has been phenomenally different. They've been moving their completion pieces, I guess I'll call them, which takes us back to the Xavier Tillmans and the O'Shea Brissetts and people being ready to do what they needed to do in the moment. Because again, you're focusing on that team aspect, right? So, I don't know what's happening on local Dallas sports if they're talking about anyone, because I don't know what local Dallas sports network does if it's not the Cowboys. But, or are they talking about, is Luka Doncic the best of all time? No, he'll never be better than Dirk Nowitzki. No, he'll never be better than, right, like so on and so forth.
Probably.
So maybe.
Yeah.
But, what we watch him do, whether you like his style of play or not, I find him fascinating to watch.
He's Jack's a hater.
This is just wrong. Every time we bring up Luka Doncic, you falsely accuse me of being a hater.
You are a hater.
That's because when you watch him, you can't stand watching him.
I don't like watching him because he's slow. That does not make me... However, I understand that he also does things that no one else has ever done on a basketball court. I don't dislike the guy. I don't think he's a bad basketball player. I don't find reasons to hate him.
He's slow.
I just don't think he's...
You just don't like watching him play basketball.
I just think that waiting 22 seconds to see him do something incredible is tedious at times.
But that's because you just, need your instant satisfaction. 22 seconds to watch somebody do something spectacular is not that long. People have been listening to us for a lot longer than that. They're still waiting for us to do something spectacular on this podcast.
Every single possession. And also, regular season Luka Doncic is much different than this playoff Luka Doncic has been.
Yeah,
especially before they made the moves at the trade deadline. Historically, Luka would sit, 35 feet away from the basket and hold the basketball and sit there until the end of the shot clock, and he would run it all the way down, and then he would do something. And it was either spectacular or it was the ugliest display of basketball of all time.
But isn't that what you expect in your superstar? You expect your superstar to play at one level for a season and then go into the playoffs and turn that on?
And he is not doing that right now.
I disagree on that.
What do you mean?
What you're saying? He did not turn it on?
No. You didn't let me finish.
Oh, okay.
I said he's not doing the thing where he just sits there and dribbles and then pulls some bullshit from 25 feet away.
Okay, I misunderstood.
He's not doing that right now.
Except for the buzzer beater. But
that shit was tough, though. That was like 8 seconds instead of 22.
So he used all the time he had.
Which is his job in that situation.
The old Larry Bird adage.
Yeah.
He left too much time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You let them get a shot off. Shouldn't let them get a shot off. I think this series means more for the Timberwolves than people are letting on. Like, the T-Wolves were a team that beat the relative favorite, I would say, to come out of the West, being the Nuggets in 7 games. After being, honestly, I thought that the series was over when they lost both of the games at home in convincing fashion to tie the series up at 2-2. But they battled back, and the fact of the matter is the Minnesota Timberwolves defense has been the thing that has driven them for the entire playoffs thus far, and it's been borderline bad in this series.
I also think that, I'm sorry.
Go.
I think that the Western Conference as a whole was known to be the better conference, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But throughout these playoffs, we've seen that teams have been incredibly inconsistent, especially the ones at the top. The Oklahoma City Thunder come out, and they're the number 1 seed. And they play, they sweep the Pelicans in 4, and then they lose to the Mavericks, who are the 6th seed, in 6 games. The Nuggets go out and kill the Lakers. Well, they didn't kill them, but they beat them in 5 games. Convincing fashion. Lose the first 2 games at home, win the next 2 games on the road, win the 3rd game at home, and then lose by 45 in Minnesota, lose by 45. And now the Minnesota Timberwolves, they kill the Suns. And then they get through the defending champions. And now they're here against this Mavericks team, and they're not consistent. And the only team that's been consistent throughout this all is the Dallas Mavericks, showing that they win series in 6 games maximum if they're going to win.
I mean, they've had a tough route, right? Being the 5 seed, playing the Clippers, another team that people thought could make a run at the championship just because of the star power that they have. And then Oklahoma City, obviously being young, but having the second person in MVP voting in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And the fact that, that is the 1 seed in the West. And now they're playing a Timberwolves team that I think everyone expected to really win the series, considering the fact that they had just beaten the defending champion Nuggets in 7 games the series before.
Maybe not even win, but at least make it a series.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone thought the Mavericks would be up 3-0.
I mean, they played 3 incredibly close games. Like, you could say 2 out of the 3 of them, the T-Wolves, had, and then kind of let away in the final minutes there. I think games 1 and 2, they both probably are looking at saying we probably could have won those.
Even last night, it's a tie game with 3 minutes left.
Yeah. So, I mean, they just haven't been able to get stops like they were getting against the Nuggets, right? They were down 20 points in Game 7 against the Nuggets, and they stopped them on 6 straight possessions to turn that game around. That's not something that's been happening for them. And a team that is driven by their defense, like the Minnesota Timberwolves is, needs to get that back if they're going to make this a series. No team has ever come back from 3-0 lead in NBA history.
Which is now what Dallas and Boston is counting on.
Correct. So, I mean, as a Boston Celtics fan, you're hoping that, we beat Indiana tonight, and then Dallas and Minnesota goes maybe to 6 games, right? So they push the series a little bit longer.
Even 5 at this point.
Yeah, just get some extra toll so that they're not coming in completely fresh to the NBA Finals, I would say. But that being said, it's going to take a miracle for this Minnesota team to make this a series again. And, I don't know.
I mean, and this Dallas team is one that would, if they're playing extra games that they don't have to, it could really bite them in the ass because they are not deep compared to the other teams that we see. Right now.
And they're less deep today with Lively being questioned.
Right. And so they're only 7 guys deep on any given night. Now you have no Lively. They're going to have to play these 6 guys tomorrow.
Alex is doing math.
Yeah, I mean,
there's 6 guys deep now. And you're going to have to see guys like Dwight Powell come in.
Dwight Powell minutes, some Jaden Hardy minutes, some Dante Exum minutes, some Josh Green minutes.
Some, yeah. But they're not on a minutes rotation every game. They're we need you, go get in the game kind of guys. And so if we're going to tire them out, if this series goes 6, it could potentially hurt the Mavericks, whose star player is hobbled, second star player is old, more than it would hurt maybe the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question. It sort of goes back to the way we started the discussions about path and easy and right for the Celtics. And I personally don't care if Dallas goes 7, right, somehow. That's great. As a Celtics fan, I think that's great because I don't need the Celtics to go the hardest road possible. I just want them to win.
Yeah.
So that to me, yeah, the ultimate goal there would be, now that we've done this this overnight edition of the Corner Office podcast, that they roll out of Dallas winning last night and the Celtics win tonight, take care of business. That's they come home and rest rather than have to come home and win, and then they get to wait.
Something that scares me about the Pacers tonight is they're a team that can score a lot of points anyways.
Yeah.
But if they have a we have nothing to lose mentality, they could go for 140.
Yeah.
Which is fairly threatening as a Celtics.
Can they do that without Halliburton?
Is he not playing?
I don't know.
Hasn't been announced yet.
Right.
And I think they can do it without Halliburton. I think you saw that in Game 3. Just the fact.
I mean, it took great performances from everyone to get to 118 or whatever the number was.
Yeah. But this is the knock on the Celtics has been, if there's a knock, that they play to their level of competition.
Correct.
And so, if that so the question really becomes which Celtics comes out tonight.
Yep.
The Celtics that we've seen in the last 2 series, which after that Game 2 loss has been all about taking care of business.
Yep.
Or the Celtics that live into their reputation, I'll call it. And so if that's the case, if they live into their reputation, then this one gets away, they come home and win. They win in 5. Fine. Right?
Well, in the
But
finals,
I'd like
the
to see them
finals
win in
has
4.
finals has a set beginning date.
Correct.
So you're waiting until then anyways.
Correct. And so you're not rushing back guys who are banged up tonight. You're up 3-0. You're going home.
I don't think Kristaps plays tonight.
No.
I don't think so.
I don't know why you would, unless you just wanted to give him 4 minutes to see what he looks like on the floor, but I don't think he's been practicing
He's
at
been
that
practicing.
level.
He's been practicing.
He's out.
Full practice?
He's definitely not playing.
He's out.
Yeah. So but I don't think he's been doing like full runs where he's
No, but they have had the luxury of the original injury was 1 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And that was now 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we have had the luxury of being able to give him the longest run time possible
for
this injury in order to come back at a
rest.
90% clip instead of a 60% clip. And that
which last year you were trying to do with Rob Williams.
And it didn't work.
And it's not the same player.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
But it is the same scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
And his injuries always took longer to come back from.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right? And then he'd come back and go back out.
Yeah.
So now, and Kristaps may be in the situation to do the same thing, but he may be in the situation to help you in a 7-game series win a ring. And that is really all you're hoping for at this point, is to get him back in time for that series.
Right.
Because that's a magnificent upgrade.
If we're going to look forward, which, it's a bit of a curse to do.
I'm not looking forward.
I'm not going to look forward, but the way that Al's playing, you have a hard time taking all of his minutes away. So it brings another level of being dynamic if you can run a lineup that has Kristaps, Al Horford, and maybe this is when Tatum's off the floor.
So that
you can get another big out there.
That does beg the question: is Al Horford taking Kristaps Porzingis' 3-point shots away from him?
Kristaps is a guy who only shoots about 3 or 4 on his night.
But maybe he'll shoot 12.
He shouldn't be.
So, Alex, when Kristaps Porzingis comes back, does Al Horford's 3-point numbers change his maximum?
Should go down. His maximum is still going to be 6.
Your maximum for him?
No, my maximum is always 6 for him. 6 is the maximum.
But what if he makes 7 of 12?
What if he makes 7 of 6?
Then he shot 5 too many.
That number does not equal 6, does it?
It's whatever.
Okay. You guys ready to get into our draft today?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Today we're going to be drafting the greatest teams across all sports of all time.
This is a fascinating topic to me. I just think it's going to be really interesting to me to see where each of us come at this from.
I've got some sleepers.
Pretty sure
you are the guest,
exactly where.
Which means that you choose the selection order. And it is snake draft. Keep that in mind.
It is snake draft. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, there's really only one chalk pick here that I need to take. So I am selfishly going to take myself first.
Okay.
You'll go second, Jack. Okay. You'll go third.
Alex likes to be in the number 2 spot.
I really don't like being third.
But you see how I'm messing it all up for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
So listen, it's gonna come as no surprise, and then I'm gonna try to get interesting after this. But with the number 1 overall pick, I am gonna take not only like greatest of all time, but greatest of all time for me is the 1986 Boston Celtics. There's no question.
And I will give you that.
It's a decent poll. It's not the first basketball team that should go off the board.
Everyone keep track of your own picks, by the way.
It is for me.
I'm going to be taking the 96 Bulls.
Yeah.
Very chalk. Have to take.
All right. Well, we're doing basketball stuff. So I'm going to take the best team from our generation for my first pick here. I'm going to take the 2016-17 Golden State Warriors.
See, I took the best team of my generation.
The 2016-17 Warriors won the championship and were the closest to sweeping the playoffs of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Did not have a great regular season record.
Doesn't matter. They have Kevin Durant on the roster.
They did in 2017-18 too. Had a great regular season record and had the championship.
Yeah, 16-17 was the better regular season record.
No, it wasn't.
I think it was.
I looked it up.
Okay, either way.
It was. They were.
If you want to take 17-18, that's fine.
They were.
Right?
They were like 7th.
You can
in
take
the West.
It. All right. My second pick is the 1992 Dream Team.
Shit, that was my pick.
That's a good pick. I had it on my list. I wasn't sure if you were going to allow that.
Yep.
Bastard. All right. I am going to take one of the 3 teams that were a part of the three-peat Lakers. I will be taking the 2000 Lakers.
Interesting.
That is fascinating to me. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm moving on from the NBA for a minute.
It's fine.
And I am going to take the 2004 New England Patriots.
Okay.
Super Bowl bound, 14-2.
Also not the best football team on the board. But...
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I think he's a little biased.
It's one of the best.
As am I.
Yeah.
It's one of the best football teams out there.
Yeah,
and was really what I would consider to be sort of the cementing of the dynasty going forward, because you had Hall of Famers, you had Richard Seymour, you had Willie McGinnis. It was the last of the old guard. You had Ty Law, Rodney Harrison. Obviously, you had Brady, Branch. Their offense was solid. It wasn't transformative because it wasn't the Randy Moss years, but it was sort of the last of the first, I should say. The 2001 was 2001, but 2004 sort of cemented them as a must-watch team going forward.
That was the Raiders Super Bowl?
No, the Raiders are in the AFC.
No, the Raiders are in the AFC.
It was the Eagles.
Okay.
Right. And so just to show that I can get out of my homer head for a minute,
yeah,
as my third pick, as I come back around, right? We're right on that?
Yep.
I will take the 1985 Chicago Bears.
So that's the right choice, yeah, for football.
As much as it hurt to watch that Super Bowl,
yeah,
as a Patriots fan, the reality was, top to bottom, that team was an all-star team.
Yeah.
And just a wagon on offense and defense.
Their defense was absurd. They're probably the best of all time.
Arguably the best of all time. But it's not like they only had a defense. They also had Willie Gault, Walter Payton, and when you just needed to move the line before the push-tush, you had the fridge.
Go ahead.
With my third pick, I am going to be taking the team that broke an 86-year-old curse. I will be taking the 2004 Boston Red Sox.
Okay, that's a homer pick for sure.
Objectively speaking, a great baseball team.
Yeah, they were good.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch the focus from American sports and go with 2008-9 Barcelona. The greatest team ever assembled under the greatest coach that's ever coached the game of football. So, I like that pick. What are you going to argue there? They won La Liga. They won the Champions League.
I've got a similar take. Just go.
Okay. And then I'm going to keep on the...
Which year did you take?
2008.
You took 2008.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to keep on the Olympic squads, and I'm going to take the 2008 Redeem Team.
You took the 2008 Barcelona.
Yeah, 8-9. Yes.
Okay. 8-9 is different than 2008. Because they did not win in 2007-8.
They won in 2008-9. That's why I said 2008-9.
Okay. Jeez. Okay. In a very similar fashion, I'm going to take a team that you could argue is right there with Barcelona and right there with the Galacticos, with the best teams of all time. 1998-99 Manchester United, treble winners, that is Champions League, Premiership, and the FA Cup. One of the greatest English teams of all time, coached by the greatest manager of all time. I will be taking the 98-99 Man United. Also, one of the best comebacks in the history of sports in the Champions League final.
Yeah, I agree. It's to you.
And now it's to me.
Yep.
So I have 2 picks left, right? That's where we're at. Picks 4 and 5. So I am going to take, I wasn't sure that we were going to do whether or not Olympics would qualify as.
Yeah, Olympics
right?
definitely qualify.
But I'm realizing either way it doesn't matter because it's not an Olympic team. It's a national team.
Okay.
I'm going to take the 1999 women's U.S. soccer team with the finest collection of female soccer players of all time and soccer players of all time.
Good pick.
Yes.
So that's just to change that up a little bit. There's a lot of picks that I have left that I like. And so I'll save a couple for my honorable mention just because I don't want to do too much in one category. And I don't know how much we're going to talk about this sport in general. So I'm going to take the 84-85 Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I had no hockey on my list.
I had one hockey team on my list.
Was that it?
Nope.
Okay. That team, the 83-88 Edmonton Oilers were just dominant. Messier and Gretzky combined together with just a phenomenal team that just ran the NHL for 5 years.
I don't really know ball well enough to know about that.
I figured that was a safe one. It's not. Yeah. There are other ones I'd love to say instead for bait purposes, but I'm like, that team needs recognition for the purposes of the draft.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to be taking the 1986 San Francisco 49ers with my final pick.
Okay.
Yep, I had them.
Okay. And I'm going to be taking the 2000 to 2001 Duke Blue Devils.
Oh, good pick. Good pick.
I was wondering when the Duke would make an appearance.
Good pick. Didn't even think about college. All right,
I think we got a lot of honorable mentions.
I got a lot of honorable mentions.
Yeah. So I'm amazed. I'm amazed by what we didn't touch.
I have, I think, 10 honorable mention teams.
I have a bunch. I mean, we could have gone literally anywhere with this, so there's definitely a lot to go over. Do you want to start?
Yeah, let's do one at a time and just pass it down the line. My first one, I had the 65 Celtics.
Okay. Yeah. I
got them here.
Okay. I had the 86-87 LA Lakers.
Yep, I had that.
I had the 71-72 Ajax team.
With
Ajax
Johan Cruyff.
Correct.
Great pull.
Yep.
Champions League winners, no?
Yes.
We'll go back around so you can...
Okay. You want me to go again then?
Yep.
All right. So I also had the 1927 Yankees.
I had them on my list, but was not going... I actually had the 1936 Yankees.
Murderers Row was 27. But
the year that Babe Ruth pointed to center field was 36.
Yeah, I think both teams phenomenal.
Yeah,
but I think
I couldn't be the one to take
comparatively. Yeah, same. I think comparatively, the 27 team is considered to be the greatest Major League Baseball team of all time.
Yes,
I didn't have that.
I have the 2014 Miami Heat.
Okay.
I do not have any Miami Heat.
I also have no Miami Heat. I had the 2011-2012 Kentucky Wildcats.
They were good.
They didn't win the national championship, which is why I didn't pick them, but they were undefeated going into a Final Four, and they have...
No, they did. That's the Anthony Davis year.
Oh, yeah.
The 2015 Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah, so that's with Anthony Davis, and I think that was a year where they had like 3 first-round draft picks.
I think they had Michael Carter-Williams.
Yep.
So, that team was a great team.
Yeah.
The 2015 Wildcats were supposed to be better. Lost to Frank Kaminsky's Wisconsin, who eventually lost to Duke in the final.
That's good recall.
2015 Duke, another team that was on my list, but I wouldn't pick. But it was too much of a
had to
pick to not put on the list there.
I have kind of a strange one. I'm going to go to my only hockey pick. I have I couldn't take this one because it's kind of an era, but I had the 2010 to 2015 Chicago Blackhawks won 3 championships in 5 years. I thought that was a pretty incredible hockey team.
Well, they beat the Bruins.
Yeah, they did.
Suck.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. I sort of felt compelled to go old because I figured there would be a different point of view and to try to shake it up and get a little bit, which is why, again, I took the Oilers, right? So I had the 1998 Tennessee women's basketball team.
With
Pat Summitt, Tamika Catching. That team was sort of the on the
Tennessee
map
used
for
to run women's basketball.
Correct.
So do you
Still
any
do have
UConn
great
teams
programs.
on there?
I
too,
do.
or-
In fact, I have two. There's so many to pick from, but I do have the 2002 and the 2016 UConn women's teams. They went 38-0 and 39-0. One had
Breanna Stewart.
One with Breanna Stewart. That's
Sue Bird.
2016.
Yep.
And then 2002 was Sue Bird and Deanna Taurasi.
So I have, on the women's subject, I had the 2023-24 South Carolina women's team, who also just went undefeated.
Yeah. Don Staley is one of the greatest coaches across sports.
No doubt.
Opinion.
And was an amazing player.
Yeah.
Competitor.
On the subject of this year, I also had the 2023-24 UConn Huskies. Who
Just go
won.
for it. Skip my pick, bro.
Yeah. Was that yours? Did you have that?
No,
We'll-
you just
we'll never
skipped
know now.
over my pick.
I was just keeping on what I had
Okay.
said. Yeah. So 2023-24 UConn Huskies, who won every game in the national tournament by a win margin of 21 points or more.
It's a good team.
21 points, I think, average win margin of 21
It's a good team. I have. I was never in a million years going to take this. I had Arsenal's invincible season,
I also have that.
and just to piggyback off that, I had the 2002 Brazil national team.
I had the 1998 France national team. And the 1970 Brazilian national team.
Okay.
I think 2002 bodies 1970.
Well, we didn't pick either of them, so it doesn't matter.
Had we though, I think you would have wasted that pick.
Which 49ers pick did you have?
86.
I had 84, which was the Ronnie Lott and Roger Craig and Jerry Rice. Obviously, I mean that team was the 80s. The 80s 49ers were.
I think 86 was the year that the catch was made.
Was it? It might have been. It might have been. But I was going to say the sort of as I think through what else I have on this very long list. I'll just give you one more, unless we need more.
I'm gonna run through the rest of mine.
Yeah, I have 8 more.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you guys do that and have fun with it. I'm going to give you my last one, which is the 1933 Pittsburgh Crawfords, which is the Negro Leagues. That team,
Josh Gibson.
Oscar Charleston, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson,
Yeah.
Judy Johnson, Cool Papa Bell, Rap
Papa
Dixon, Ted Radcliffe. They were an independent club, and they were like the epitome of the barnstorming Negro League.
Satchel Paige. One time, there's a ton of stories about Satchel Paige that are probably not true, but we tell them like they're true. On that team, he was believed to have snuck a second baseball into his glove, and he had a runner on first and third, and he pitched the ball forward, and a ball went either way, and he got both runners in a pickoff. That's a story that is probably physically not possible,
But it's a great story.
but it's a
nonetheless.
great story.
So that's my last sort of out of left field, discussion point.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I had the 2001 Miami Hurricanes, the
Football
college
team?
football team,
Yeah.
with like Michael Irvin and like a bunch.
Marshall Falk,
If you look anywhere
Ray
on that
Lewis,
team, you have a star player.
Sean Taylor,
won the
Ed
national
Reed,
championship.
Brian Urlacher, Greg Olson, and everyone.
So they were good.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
We can trade off. You can go next.
I've got the 2008 Celtics.
Okay.
First Big Three.
Yep.
Official Big Three started the whole super team movement.
I have the 2006-07 San Antonio Spurs.
I also had that team. I have another team I was never going to take. I have the 1998 New York Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that like you, that's a team that I wrote down because they were so dominant, but there was no way I was going to.
No chance.
I had the 2019 LSU Tigers, also college football, but that was Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson.
I have the 1986 New York Mets. I think that was the year. They had Darryl Strawberry.
That season was canceled. Didn't happen.
What was the Mets team?
The 1986 Major League Baseball season was canceled.
So it may not have been 86. But
It didn't happen. The Mets played that year.
Oh, yeah. Right.
There was actually no World Series that year. Didn't happen. Because if it did, the Red Sox would have won it, and it didn't happen. So that clearly that didn't happen.
Okay. Not quite getting it. We're gonna move on nonetheless.
That's better for all of us.
Okay.
And my last pick was just like kind of a random one that I pulled out was the United States Beijing Olympics 4x11 relay team in 2008 with Lezak and Michael Phelps. And,
4x100.
Yeah, 4x100. Why did I say 4x8?
Unreal swimming relay.
Yeah.
Ryan Lochte, Michael Phelps. Oh my God. Unreal swimming relay. I will tell you. I think that also 2016 Katie Ledecky in the 800-meter swim literally lapped the entire competition. Or it may have been
that was
she did.
They were swimming laps.
Correct.
Yes, that's good.
It may have been the mile swim, but I remember Katie Ledecky literally had an entire length of pool in between her and second place, which was incredible.
So I don't think your listeners have ever thought that they were going to get a moment where there was such exciting swim talk during the poll.
Little did
Jack
you know.
used to swim.
Little did you know. I used to be on the edge of my seat for an old race around the water, but I digress. I have 3 teams left. Never going to take this one either, but I had the Cowboys when Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman were there. I have the 2012 San Francisco Giants, which may have not been a great baseball team, but somehow just kept winning World Series. So
Was that like Buster Posey?
I think they had 2010, 12, and 14.
Tim Lincecum.
So was that right before we signed Pablo Sandoval?
I think it was a few years before we signed Pablo Sandoval. It was Panda, Tim Lincecum, Buster Posey, Crawford, Ryan, whatever his name was, out of the bullpen, Sergio Romo. They had everyone on that team. And then to close it out, I have the 2016. No, that's the wrong year. I have the 2017 New England Patriots, the Deflategate year. Tom Brady was suspended for the first 4 games, still go on to run the table and win the Super Bowl. One of the greatest football teams of all time.
So there you have it.
There's our list.
And so it shall be.
That marks the end of this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties. And hopefully we'll have another episode like this very soon. But until then, my name is Jack Byrne.
And I'm Alex Penders.
And I'm Kevin Penders.
Kevin, thank you for coming on the show.
Of course.
It was a great time.
As always, thanks for having me. You had no choice. You're in my basement.
Well, until next time, this has been the Corner Office. Go on.